What's up, everybody? It is Kristen and Morgan here. I am so excited to have Morgan. A lot of you know Morgan from the Paul and Morgan Show. That's y'all's YouTube channel, right? And Morgan has just been such an incredible voice of a Christian woman and her husband, Paul. They're both amazing, just talking and tackling cultural issues, like bam, 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 hot button stuff.
Yeah.
And their courage and boldness is just incredible in the online world and in person. So, Morgan, thanks for joining me for this conversation today.
Thank you. What a welcoming. I am honored.
This is so fun. I was just telling Morgan before we recorded that we've never done this before for Girl Defined, like having an interview that's a podcast and something for YouTube and Instagram. Honestly, it's going to be everywhere. And so thanks for being our guinea pig, Morgan.
Again, honored to be the guinea pig. I volunteer as tribute. So here we go.
Woo! You're the perfect person. And we're testing new technology on Morgan too. So I'm like, Morgan, you're just like all the things. But for people who don't know you and don't know Paul and don't know your YouTube channel, tell me a little bit about that side of your life, just like the ministry side. And then we're going to go back in time and we're going to talk about your journey of getting married, desiring children, wrestling with unfulfilled longings through infertility. You know, most people listening know that's been a huge part of my story and continues to be. And so for those of you watching, you're going to want to stick around till the very end, because whether you're like, I'm single, I'm not even thinking about fertility at this point in my life, or you're like, I'm popping out kids left and right and I'm trying to stop this, or if you're just like wrestling with unfulfilled longings and you're desiring things and you're crying out to God and you don't feel like he's answering your prayer, or maybe you're struggling to celebrate with your sister who's getting the very thing that you desire, stick around for this conversation because you're going to find so much encouragement. But Morgan, tell us a little bit about you and Paul and what you guys do.
So Paul and me, Morgan, have a channel called Paul and Morgan, very original. And we make YouTube videos on social issues and culture from a Christian perspective. To help our viewers have hope and be free in the Lord.
Yes.
We have been doing YouTube for, it'll be 5 years in November, which is crazy.
Wow.
So crazy.
That's a long time in the YouTube world.
I know. And so we started out though doing more on life, love, and dating, and that's kind of how we got connected with you guys, because your channel was very similar to what we were doing, talking about dating and intentional dating and whatnot. But then we decided to move into culture and things happening in the world, and it's been crazy.
Oh man. So wait, what made y'all take that shift, like that turn?
I think Paul and I were both like, okay, we really like talking about this dating stuff, but we've been married. I think we had been married at that point for like 4 years, and we were like, we don't even remember what it's like to date anymore. We need to move on from this. No. But we were kind of like, we've been out of the dating game for a while. Not that we can't still give advice and whatnot, but I think it was more like our enjoyment and our interest started going into like politics and what was happening around the world and just in our country. And so we were like talking about that a lot just on our day-to-day life. So we were like, let's do this on our channel too.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Some of y'all's topics, I'm like, wow, they are so bold and so courageous, because you know you're going to get pushback. And, you know, we've experienced that at Girl Defined as well. So we're not unfamiliar with pushback. But I just love that you guys are doing it as a married couple. That's pretty unique. Like I do Girl Defined with my sister Bethany, but y'all are a married couple doing this together. And I just think that's so amazing. And so like such a blessing to so many people. But take us back in time. I was trying to think about where I wanted to start with your story. Take me back to your dating years. Like when you met Paul, did you like him at first sight? Did it take a while? Give us like a snippet of your dating journey, getting married, and then we'll go from there.
Oh man. Okay.
Everybody loves a good love story.
Right. So Paul and I met on Tinder.
Yes, that's right. I love it.
And he was like on the hunt for a wife. My friend had set up my Tinder account and like it was a total joke, and I was not intending to talk to anyone on there. And then one night I was just like, all right, let's just see who's on here. I'll start swiping left or right. So Paul and I matched, and he didn't message me when we matched. And I was like, So a day later, I sent him a message and I was like,
Mm.
hey, I like Jesus too. Because he had that in his like bio, like, I love Jesus or something. So I think I said, hey, I love Jesus too. So there's that. And
Is that all you said to him?
that's all I said. I love Jesus too. So there's that.
That is hilarious.
I know. And then he responded and we talked for probably like 3 days online through Facebook. And then he asked me out on a date and I said, okay. And he says that he did not think that I was going to say okay. So I don't know why he would think that, but I said okay. And so we met up.
Were y'all in the same city at the time?
We lived about an hour and 20 minutes away from each other.
Okay.
So we
But
met
like driving distance.
Yes, yes. So we met in the middle, in a town called Frankfort, Kentucky, and we had our first date. And honestly, I was like caught off guard. Like after our first date, I was very hesitant to go on a second date with him because I thought that
Oh,
he was
wow.
too good for me.
Oh, like in what way?
So he like when we would talk, so on our first date I told him everything. I literally just spilled my guts out and told him absolutely everything, all my deepest darkest secrets. I was just like, I'm gonna get it
Mm.
all out on the first date, and then if he doesn't like me, oh well, I'll move on.
Yeah. Like saving time right here. Here we go.
Exactly. And so I was not a virgin when I met him and he was, and he had not even kissed a girl, and I
Wow.
was like, oh my goodness, this guy is too good for me. He's too pure. He's too innocent and young and naive.
Mm.
All in all the best ways. Which he's older than me, but
Yes.
yeah, so I don't know. I was very intimidated by him and just like looking back on it, like he and even my mom pointed this out to me while we were dating when I was about to call it off. My mom was like, why don't you go look at your journals and see all the things that you've written down that you wanted in the past for a husband and see if Paul is those things. And so I had
Oh.
actually made a list of things, probably like, I don't even know, years before meeting Paul, of just things I wanted in a man. And like he was all of those things.
Wow.
Like even like the really like I said I wanted a strong jaw.
Oh, you had like the details.
I had the details. And so
The
like
Lord is
even
in the
those
details. What can we say?
exactly, he is. And so I was just kind of like reading through these things and I was like, oh wow, like he's like the guy that I've been praying for. But I don't know, I was really scared about it for a few like weeks before I finally was like, okay, you know what? No, I think he's gonna be my
Hmm.
husband.
Wow. And
Yes.
was he really going for it? Like he was really interested and
He was very interested. It's funny because like in our dating phase, he was super interested at the beginning and then I got super interested and then he kind of started to get scared and like
mm-hmm.
skin started to pull back and I was like, "No, the Lord already revealed to me, buddy, that you're my husband." I didn't tell him that, but I was thinking that in my head. I'm like, "You're not going anywhere."
Good thing you didn't tell him that. He would have been like, okay,
Right.
peace out.
Bye.
Yeah. So then what
Yes.
happened?
So about we dated for 4 months and then he proposed and
After
then
4 months from the time that y'all met.
yes.
Okay. I mean, that probably gives some hope to a lot of girls right now. They're like, it can happen.
I know, it can. And then we were only engaged for 4 months. So I mean,
Wow.
total we only knew each other for 8 months before we got married.
Wow. And how long have you been married now?
We have been married for a little over 5 years.
Okay. So, I
Nice.
mean, your marriage is lasting.
Wow.
Clearly, the Lord is in it. And so that was 2016?
16.
2016.
Yes.
Okay. So 4 months of dating, 4 months engagement. That's crazy. My relationship was way too long. Zach and I were like friends for like 3 or 4 years. And I liked him the whole time and almost married someone else in between. And that was awkward. And
No.
then we dated for 10 months and then we were engaged for 8 months. And it just felt like an
No.
eternity. I don't
Oh,
recommend it. I'm like, if you know, just go for it. Like
just go for it.
there's no reason to just like go slow. Like if the
Yeah.
people around you are on board and you're like pursuing the Lord and you're both on the same page, like no need. Okay, so you guys got married in 2016. And at the time, were you guys, we're just going to get really personal because I know you're very open. Yes. So I'm sure there's no question I can ask you that you're like,
no, there's really not.
Limits. Okay. Were you guys on birth control? Were you open to having kids right away? Like, where were you guys at in that department?
So when we first got married, I actually was struggling pretty severely with depression and anxiety. I was having a lot of panic attacks. I was on heavy antidepressants. And I just personally, mentally was just like, I cannot have a child right now. And Paul and I both going into marriage, we were like, yeah, like we don't, we want kids, but we don't think that we want them right now. And so I got on birth control, and probably I was only on birth control for maybe like 2 months into marriage. And then I was like, this stuff is making me feel absolutely terrible. I'm not doing this. So I got off of that, and we used other protection. And about 6 months into us being married, I was like having quiet time with the Lord, and I was like, I just remember I wasn't praying about anything in particular, but I was just like, Lord, I trust you with my life. I give you my marriage. I give you my plans. I give you my ways. And I just felt him very clearly speak into my spirit, or whatever it was, just like say, but do you really trust me? And I was like, why are you asking that, Lord?
Yes.
And all of the sudden, birth control, contraception came up into my mind, and I was like, but like, I'm not doing that because I don't trust you, Lord. I just like don't think that we're ready to have kids. And he was like, how about you just trust me with when I think the time is right? And so having this little like inner dialogue with the Lord. And so I like prayed on it right then and was like, Lord, like if this is something you are convicting me of right now, would you convict Paul over it as well? And so like I think later that night I went and I had a conversation with Paul and just told him like I had a really interesting quiet time with the Lord. I don't know if we should be using contraception anymore. Like I don't know if we'll get pregnant immediately, maybe, but I just feel like maybe I was just in a place of really like lacking trust in the Lord in a lot of areas of my life. And I think that he was just saying like, give it all to me, Morgan, like give it all. So I brought that to Paul and he was like, I don't know about that. And
right, because the minute you stop preventing it, it's like, everyone just gets pregnant, like snap your finger. It feels that way.
Immediately, I thought that I was gonna have a baby the next week. Like, it's just gonna show up. So he was like, I'll pray on this, but like, if you're okay with it, can we still continue to use contraception right now? And I was like, yes, it's okay. And probably, I don't know, 3 days later, he went on a day trip to Cincinnati to visit his sister, and he talked to a guy up there that he had grown up with, and they just had a conversation. And something that the guy said to him like convicted him, and like they weren't even really necessarily talking about that, but like he just spoke very specifically to this situation. And so Paul came home and he was like, wow, I think that you're right, like we should not be on contraception anymore. And I was like, okay. Wow.
Talk about a direct answer to your prayer.
Right. Seriously. I mean, it was
like that God would work in his heart.
Yes. It was wild. Yeah.
So you got off birth control, but then you were doing natural forms.
So
contraceptive. Natural forms like just preventing, or were you like, I'm trusting the Lord altogether? Like we're not doing anything.
Yeah, I didn't even really know like about the natural family planning type things. Like I had an idea of it, but I was just like, you know what? If we're gonna just stop, we're gonna just stop, and we're just gonna let the Lord do his thing. And I mean, we did not try to stop it from happening at all.
So I imagine like y'all probably felt the way Zach and I felt when we actually never did anything to prevent. But like when we got married, we were kind of praying like, Lord, we trust you in this area. We want your timing for us, and now ironically, I look back on the past 10 years and I'm like, I had no idea what was going to happen when I prayed that prayer. Like, Lord, I trust you with your timing. Because I'm thinking like, oh, if we're not going to prevent, we're totally going to get pregnant on our honeymoon. And, but Lord, if you could just give us like maybe a year or two, that'd be so great for our marriage. Like the Lord knew we needed a lot more than that apparently. But
Yeah.
were y'all feeling that way? Like if we don't prevent, like we're so just going to get pregnant next month.
Oh my goodness. I remember the first night that we went to have sex that I was like, I started crying because I was like, okay, like I know that I said I trust the Lord, but like, oh my goodness, what if I get pregnant?
Yes.
I like, for some reason, I have this really weird fear. I don't even know why this was my concern, but I was like, what if you love the baby more than me?
Hey, that's what I have heard other women talk about that. That's a thing.
So weird.
Yes. It's another human that you're like, they're in your family and you're not competing, but it might feel that way. Like, oh.
Yes, it was strange.
Uh-huh.
And Paul was just kind of like, I don't know what to say to this. I don't think,
Yes.
like, I'm gonna love the child, but you're my wife.
Yes. No child can replace my wife, honey.
Right.
Oh my word. So you obviously didn't get pregnant. And then what happened like over the next few months? What were you thinking during that time? Like the next 6 months?
Yeah, so I think within the next 6 months, I think I got like a pregnancy test twice, just like, and I wasn't even late on my period. I was just like, I just want to see.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a few days before my period. And it was negative, obviously, and I was just kind of like, wow, okay, this is crazy, Lord, like, you really know what you're doing.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I mean, that really was my thought. It was kind of relief because I was like, growing up, I just believed that, like, as soon as you had sex, like, you were going to have a baby. And, like, you needed to be careful. If you weren't ready to have a baby, don't be having sex. And so, yeah, it was interesting for that to happen. And probably like a year into it, I was kind of like, okay, this is weird. Like, what's going on here?
Were you starting to get concerned at that year mark, or were you thinking more like, oh, this is like a blessing from the Lord, we have time? Like, where was your heart in that?
I think after a year, I was kind of at the place of like, okay, it's been cool that we haven't gotten pregnant. And like, honestly, I'm still not totally ready for a baby, whoever is. But I was like, I still would be okay if I didn't get pregnant for a little while longer or whatever. I was like, but just in case, like, I'm going to go to my OBGYN and just get some blood drawn and just like make sure that like there's nothing seriously wrong with me. Because I was scared that maybe that's why I was not getting pregnant, and like the Lord was trying to tell me, go get checked out.
Yeah.
And so I went to my OBGYN. I let her know like that we had been having unprotected sex for a year now and still no baby. And she like was like, oh, like, Morgan, you're infertile and you're struggling with fertility. And I was like,
wow.
Huh?
She said that? She said you're infertile? What?
Yeah.
Just like that? So fast?
Yeah, like so fast without even like checking. I've had some very strange doctor experiences, let me just tell you.
That's
And so like
crazy.
she was like, after a year, like you basically, I will, if you have not had a baby by after a year of having unprotected sex, I diagnose you as infertile and we have to move on to trying things. And I was like, I was not expecting to hear that in my doctor's office appointment. Like, I was just like wanting to get some blood drawn and whatever. And so I was like, I'm infertile? What does that even mean? I can't have babies ever? And like, it's
such a strong word.
Yes.
It's not even like, okay, infertility could be a struggle for you. It's like, what?
Yeah, you're just infertile. And so I was like, so I think that honestly, like, I kind of wrote that whole doctor's visit off. Like, I got blood drawn, we had Paul checked out, and he was totally fine. And I was just like, you know what? I don't want to deal with this right now. So we went a whole nother year and still no baby. And I was just kind of like, I think I finally reached the point of being like, okay, I think that I should address this and like see what maybe that doctor meant. And so I went to a different doctor, and that's kind of when I started different little treatments. I guess actually it was probably Uh, I don't honestly remember the timeline totally
Yeah.
perfectly, but
Like sometime
yeah,
after the 2-year mark.
yes.
And what sort of like little treatments were y'all pursuing?
So the first treatment, well, it wasn't necessarily a treatment, but I was actually still on antidepressants, and
Mm.
my psychiatrist, I had been talking to her. I have worked with her for like 7 years, and she was like, Morgan, like I think that you are totally ready to get off of antidepressants.
Mm.
She's like, I don't know if you know this or not, but because I had told her that we had been trying to have children, or at least just having unprotected sex, and she was like, I don't know if you know this, but antidepressants can sometimes cause women to not get pregnant because they lower your hormones and they kind of
Mm.
mess with some stuff. And so I was like, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And your
And
doctor, your other doctor didn't even say anything about that.
she didn't
It's
even think to like ask me.
crazy. Crazy. Okay, so that probably felt kind of hopeful in that moment. Like, oh,
Yes.
okay, this could be part of the problem.
Yes, and so I went through the withdrawal steps of getting off of antidepressants. It took about 3.5, 4 months to fully get off of them, and I was kind of thinking like, okay, like my hormones will just level themselves out, blah blah
Hmm.
blah. So probably 6 months after that, this is the 3 year mark. I went to like a holistic naturopath doctor, and I had just like all kinds of blood labs drawn, and like a lot of my hormones came back just showing that they were just super low, super out of whack.
Mm.
And so like I was working with her for probably a year and a half trying to get my hormones back into the right place where they needed to be. And that's
Yeah.
kind of where we're at now, except I've been seeing a fertility specialist. But
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
Have you guys, with the fertility specialist you're currently seeing, have y'all talked about like treatments or where are you guys at on in that department? Because I know so many people over the years, and you know, I know you get all the questions too. Like, okay, well, are you pursuing fertility treatments? Have you considered this? How do you feel about that? And what about
Right.
adoption? It's so beautiful. And, you know,
Yes.
and ironically, yes, we did actually adopt, as many people know, recently, but that was not always a part of my plan. And I share the whole story in our book, Not Part of the Plan.
Yes.
So much of my life has not gone according to my plan. And it sounds like for yours, a lot of that is true as well. So, at this
Absolutely.
point in time, where are you guys at with like
Yeah.
direction of where you feel like you're going? Or are you just like, you know what, we're just going to wait and trust the Lord? Because for us, for years, that's where we felt like God had us. Like we did not feel like
Mhm.
He was calling us or directing us or giving us peace to pursue even treatments or adoption. We just felt like He wanted us to just serve and plug into our church and community and family
Yeah.
right where we had it. So, I mean, there's a lot of routes.
Yeah, definitely. So I did not feel a lot of peace from the Lord until about a year and a half ago to start pursuing just like checking out my body. Really, my
Mm-hmm.
main focus is just like making sure that my body is at its best so that, you know, the Lord can do his thing.
Yeah.
Obviously, he can do his thing no matter what, but I'm like, there are things that I need to do practically, just making sure I'm
Mm-hmm.
eating healthier, making sure I'm taking vitamins, making sure whatever. And if hormones are crazy, like let's, do what I can to get them in the right place. So the past year I worked with a naturopath doctor, and it was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of promised a baby within 3 months of doing kind of like the natural hormone treatment that she had me on, which
Mm.
was like seed cycling and taking these like natural vitamins, and I had some other medications that she had me on that were like hormonal, like progesterone
Yeah, yeah.
and thyroid medication, whatever. And basically she said like after 3 months, like you should be pregnant. And I was
Wow.
kind of like, oh wow. So 3 months went by, nothing. 6 months went by, nothing.
Mm.
9 months went by, and I was just kind of like,
Wow.
you know what? This is really frustrating me. And so I just kind of went to the Lord and was like, Lord, like I don't want to pursue something that you are not like sending me down that path on, but I just felt a
Mm-hmm.
lot of peace about going and seeing a fertility specialist because again, I just have
Yeah.
never been like fully checked out to see if something in me is wrong. Like is something in my
Yeah.
ovaries wrong? Do I have PCOS or endometriosis, you know?
Totally.
And so I went to the fertility specialist and she looked at all my labs that I had been doing for the past year and all the medication and stuff that I was on. And she was like, she sat me down and she was like, I don't want to bad talk any doctor ever, or like speak harshly or whatever, say negative things about them.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, but and I don't know how to like really tell you this without just being blunt about it. She was like, basically, what this doctor has had you been doing has basically put you on birth control for the past year of your life.
What? The
And I
natural
was
doctor?
like, yes.
Oh my goodness.
I was just like, how's that even possible? And she was
Yes.
like,
What
so
in the world?
basically, yeah, she's like, the medication that she had you on is like totally fine medication that I prescribe to my patients at times. She's like, but it's really, really important the days and the times that you're taking this medication. And it would seem to me that she had you taking them on the totally wrong days,
No.
which basically made your body like shut down and not like do what it's supposed to do,
Like
like
it
drop.
wasn't working with your body's natural cycle and rhythm.
Yes,
What in the
exactly.
world?
So I was like, obviously I cried a lot because I was just
Oh,
like, oh my
I'm
goodness,
so sorry.
the past year of my life, I have been like literally on birth control without knowing
That is awful.
it.
I
Yeah,
am
so
so sorry. So what did she say? Like get off of everything, start a new
yeah,
protocol with me or
yes, so she was like she made me feel very confident and just she checked me out. I got all the stuff done, looked at and everything, ultrasounds and whatnot, and she was like, I don't see any reason right now as to why you could not get pregnant other than the fact that your hormones are messed up because of the medications that you were on. She was like,
mm,
so we're gonna just start you fresh, get off of those medications, we're gonna clean you out for a whole month and not do anything, like don't take any medications other than prenatals, and then um you next month will kind of start a new treatment. So basically what I have done is I've taken a medication that kind of I guess makes my body ovulate. Honestly, I'm not totally sure what it
yeah.
all does. I'm
Yeah.
just like, Lord, I'm gonna trust you by trusting this doctor. Like
Yes. Yes.
and so I took medication for 5 days and then I actually have been doing trigger shots. So
Yep.
I have done that, my first round of
Wow.
that, so we'll see what happens.
That's exciting. So it's kind
Yeah.
of like it's at least what I've heard it called is like a medicated cycle. So a
Yes.
medicated cycle where you're using medicine to help boost a strong ovulation
Yes.
to try to get pregnant. And then I
Mhm.
think like at least our fertility specialist said, and sorry for my voice for those, I haven't given a disclaimer. I lost my voice, so I sound like a horse, but it's like getting lower by the day and it's like going away. They were saying like, okay, medicated cycles where you start, and then if that doesn't work, you can bump it up to IUI, so intrauterine insemination,
Yes.
which is
Mhm.
like a medicated cycle, but with the actually like putting sperm in the uterus and like
Yeah.
bypassing some of the other parts of sex to try to like
Mhm.
make it as easy
Right.
as possible. And then if they were saying if that doesn't work, then we want to ramp you up to IVF, and then so it's just
Mhm.
like I don't know, kind of tiers. But we
Yeah.
actually didn't do the medicated cycle. We just went straight for IUI, didn't work for us, and
Yeah.
then that's I don't know, it's like maybe a year later God started redirecting our steps toward adoption.
Yeah.
But it's I am so grateful for medicine that there
Mhm.
are options, like
Mhm.
options that can help our bodies. We live in a fallen world, and I'm so grateful for that. And for me it was always a hard balance of like not putting my trust and hope in the medicine, but
Yeah.
being hopeful and
Mhm.
like trusting your doctor, but ultimately having my hope and trust in the Lord. Like, how's
Mhm.
that been for you? Not even just in this moment, but like that balance of like surrender
Yeah.
and like finding your hope in the Lord, but not
Yeah.
stopping, like crying out to God for this, for a child. Like, yes, the Lord says this is a blessing. Like, for me, that's always been a challenge. I feel like I'm still growing in that, but like,
Mhm.
how are you in that?
That's interesting because literally yesterday, the trigger shot came. It's like delivered through the mail, and then you do it yourself at home. It got
Mm-hmm.
mailed to me, and I was like sitting there looking at the shot, and I was like, man, there's a lot of hope riding on this trigger shot.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, wait, no, there's not hope riding on this trigger shot. Like I have hope in it, but like my hope is in the Lord. And
Mm-hmm.
like, Lord, like whatever your will is, I have come to realize that every trial, every hardship, every whatever, issue, thing that you did not plan in your life to
Yes.
happen is like very purposeful. And the Lord, man, over and over, I'm sure you've seen this, I know you have, like, we just see that He takes these really painful things and makes them
Yeah.
beautiful somehow. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
even when I'm like still in the middle of it, we're still in the middle of it, like I can see, and I have, this is a active thing, like I have to make sure that I do this, but I can sit down and look at the beautiful things that the Lord has done through the past
Mm.
4 years of us trying to get pregnant. Like
Wow.
I can see that, and I can see the growth that has happened in me and in Paul in our marriage, and just how we have united in this journey. And
Mm.
like, just the strength, the firm foundation in the Lord,
Yeah.
that has been built, that maybe would not have been built had I not gone
Yes.
through this trial. And
Yes.
so I don't ever want to take any of this trial, any of this hardship for granted. It's
Mm.
a beautiful process, even though it's painful.
Yeah, which scripture speaks to so many times, right? Like our
Yes.
trials do produce endurance, perseverance in the Lord. And to what you said just now, so encouraging, I'm sure, for any woman listening who's like, yeah, for me, it's not infertility, but it's this
Mm-hmm.
health issue I've been struggling with for years. And it's chronic and it limits me in what I can do. And
Yeah.
I don't know what God's doing. Why won't He heal me? Or the woman who's single.
Mm-hmm.
I still have a lot of single friends who are older, and
Mm-hmm.
my sister Bethany recently recorded a reel on Instagram, and it was about something like when that 19-year-old gets engaged and gets married again, and then the reel was like some voiceover talking about like, how does it feel to live my dream?
I
Like,
saw that. That was
it's
funny.
so true. It's so the girl who's like, yeah, I'm like way older than I ever thought I would be, still single. What is God doing in this journey? I mean,
Yeah.
maybe a woman who is married, but her marriage she feels like is on the rocks, and she's like, God, restore this relationship. Never
Mm-hmm.
saw this. Like, what is going on? So many things that are
Yep.
not according to our plan. And I know everyone has something. I actually did a survey on my Instagram, and I just said, are you wrestling with an unanswered prayer? And it was like yes or no. And like over 90% of people said yes,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and that is, so I'm like, we're not alone in this. It doesn't have
Yeah.
to be infertility. There's a million things. And, okay, God gives you children. It's like, look at Rachel in the Bible. She's like, give me children or I shall die. And God gave her children, gave her a child. And then it still wasn't enough. That what she said, give me another one. So like,
Mm-hmm.
even if we get the things we desire, if God does answer our prayer, if our hope is in that, then we'll get
Mm-hmm.
to that place and we'll realize, oh, like, why am I
Oh,
not fully satisfied? Like, why am I
that's
not?
so good.
And so, yeah, like for the woman who might be listening and going, I don't even know like what God could be doing in this. Like, I just want this thing so bad. How do you train your heart to see the Lord in it? How have you done that over these past few years? Like, to see God's goodness in the trials, because when it doesn't feel so good, it's hard
Right.
to see any good in it. And I felt that so many times. So like, what would you
Mm-hmm.
say to that woman who's like, I just don't even know like what good could come from this?
Yeah. I think I'm all about the practicals, and so
Yeah.
literally, if that is just you personally alone in your quiet time, sitting down and journaling out, just like looking back on the past year, and you might have to think for a long time, but
Mm-hmm.
thinking about the good things that have happened in your life in the past year, thinking about, what are the positives, and writing down a positive and a con list, and then giving those cons to the Lord. Um,
Mm.
or even just talking to your friends or your family and being like, hey, how have you seen me grow in the past year through this trial? Have you seen me grow? Have I grown at all? Like, and i
Yes, that's good.
i feel like, and I hope that the answer would be, oh yeah, you have grown a lot in this. Like, two of my best friends, they are super great at encouraging me, and like they have just been very encouraging through this whole journey of infertility. And they'll tell me all the time, like, Maureen, you have grown so much in your strength,
Mm.
like in the
Wow.
Lord, and just like as a woman, like you are just
Yes.
strong, a strong woman of God. And I'm like, oh, thank you.
Yes,
I'm
like
like,
praise the Lord.
yeah. Like,
Yes.
oh, so I'm not
Seriously.
weak. Like, I feel like I'm super weak and I am weak,
Mhm.
but through the Lord's strength, like, I've grown a lot. And so finding those things, I
That's
say
good.
is very good. And also, I had a conversation with Paul recently where I was thinking about something that traumatic that happened to me years ago. And I was just kind of like, looking back on that, still to this day, I have no idea why I needed to go through that. I have
Mm.
no idea why I needed to have that experience, but I cannot wait to talk to my father one
Mm.
day and like be able to like kind of look back on that like in a video or however he wants to show me and like
Yeah.
show me, no, Morgan, here you grew from this, or you gained more wisdom here, or you blah blah blah. And like just trusting, holding on to that hope and that trust of
Yes.
like, even if you can't see the beauty in it right now, like trust that one day the Lord is going to reveal to you exactly
Mm.
what he was doing to you, for you, and through you in
Wow.
that moment. um,
Wow, that's so good. I know that's going to encourage so many women because we don't always like I love to ask why about everything and
mhm.
I love to ask it to God the most.
Yeah.
And I remember after my third miscarriage a couple years back, I was just crying out to the Lord like why? Why would I have to walk through all these years of infertility after two early miscarriages, get pregnant, have another
Mhm.
miscarriage? Like, why would you even
Mhm.
allow me to get pregnant? Like, God, what are you doing in this? And I remember my
Yeah.
husband, Zach, was such an anchor for me, so encouraging. Was just like,
Mhm.
he's like, I wonder if when we ask why, what we're really asking God is, why don't you just change this? Like, we don't
Mhm.
even really want to know why he's doing it. What we
Right.
really want is just for him to change it, right? Like, take this
Yeah.
away, make it different. And God doesn't always give us, He doesn't
Mm.
reveal all the pieces to the puzzle. Like in our
Yeah.
book, Not Part of the Plan, we use this analogy early on to talk about our life, and our perspective on our life is literally like we're looking through a straw. So like
Mm.
next time you're drinking a drink with the straw, hold it up and look through it and look around. Like how much can you see, right? Like
Yeah.
you can see so little, and that is
Mhm.
truly our vantage point for our life. We can see today, we can see the past. We
Mhm.
have no idea what the next hour, the next day, the next year holds. And
Yeah.
yet God, who holds all things in his hand, he sees the beginning from the end. Our days are numbered. He has this time appointed for us to be on this earth. He sees our entire story. He's working it together for our good and his glory.
Mhm.
And yet we look at him and go, "Ah, God, are you even good? What are you doing? Why are you
Mhm.
doing this? I can't trust you." Because
Mhm.
we're looking through that straw, and God's saying, put the straw
Mhm.
down and trust me. I see it all. And for me, in those moments where I'm like, God, why? I just picture that analogy and I think, okay, yes, this is hard. This is real. This is a trial. This is a valley. Like, God,
Mhm.
He's near to the brokenhearted. He sees our pain. He's not a distant God. He's a close Father. But I have
Yeah.
to remind my heart, I don't know what He's up to. I can't see
Mhm.
it. And so, for the woman who is sitting in that unanswered prayer, like, how have you found hope in the Lord specifically with this specific unanswered prayer where you feel like God hasn't given me a clear yes, He hasn't
Yeah.
given me a clear no? You're kind of
Right.
like me, like waiting.
Mhm.
So, how do you stay hopeful in the Lord when you just feel like, God, where are you in this? Why aren't you answering my prayer?
Yeah. Oh man. You know, I think I've had to be okay with the fact that you're allowed to cry, you're allowed to
Mm-hmm.
grieve, you're allowed to be sad. But something that I just kind of say that I'm not allowed to do is like stay in that low
Mm.
for too long, because then it becomes very easy to live in that low forever and forget that, like, no, God is still good. Like he still is
Yes.
worthy of all of our praises, like no matter what we're going through. And I think that that has been something very beautiful for the Lord to reveal
Mm.
to me in this time, and that has given me just more hope, is that, like, man, God, you're just so good. Like you welcome me into your throne room to just sit and be with you anytime, any day, anywhere. Like you want that, you desire that.
Mm.
For me to like have that realization and to like remind myself of that regularly, I'm just like, the king of the universe wants to
Yeah.
hang out with me. Like, this is so cool. And
Mm-hmm.
so, like, and he wants to hang out with me in my heaviness, in my imperfection, in my, my grief and whatnot. And so, like, inviting him into that grief and just being like, Lord, I don't know why. I don't know why you're doing this, and I don't know why it's taken me 4.5 years
Yes.
to get pregnant, and here I am still like sticking myself with needles like for trying to
Mm-hmm.
have a
Mm-hmm.
baby. Like, why?
Yes.
Why does this have to be the case, Lord? I don't know why, but I'm really
Yeah.
thankful that you're walking through this journey with me. I
Mm-hmm.
I heard something recently, and I feel like I'm gonna tell it terribly, but I'm
Go
gonna
for it.
try. So, it was a girl. She was talking about the story of when Jesus was on the boat with his disciples, and he took a nap, and the disciples started freaking out because the storm happened. And she was like, "What if the disciples weren't freaking out because the storm was crazy, but they were freaking out because they had Jesus with them, but there was still a storm happening?" And they were like,
Mm.
Jesus, what the heck? You're with us. Why is there a storm happening? And I think that it's like God didn't promise us that we wouldn't go through storms, but he
Mm.
promised that I will be in that boat with you. I'll be
Yeah.
in that storm with you. And like eventually the calm will come, like because, it just will
Yes.
eventually. And
That's
one
so
way or
good.
another, his will be done. And so, yeah, I just thought that was cool.
That's so good. You said it really well. I got that
Woo!
analogy. I've never heard it put like
I
that way
know.
from that
Yeah,
perspective.
I thought it was
That's
really
really
good.
interesting, but it's 100% relatable. Like,
Yes.
yeah, we have the God of the universe, and yet we're like terrified. We're
Mhm.
afraid, and He's right there with
Yeah.
us. And it's almost, it is as if we view our life from a lens of like, whatever we view the good life to be, like the good life
Mhm.
for me. This is what the good life is. And when it veers and we have twists and turns, we're like, God, what are you doing? But
Yeah.
our whole framework is off. Like, God tells
Mhm.
us in His Word time and time again, like, there will be
Yeah.
trials. You will be persecuted. You will have
Yep.
trouble. It will be hard. And then it's like our life takes a turn and we're like, God, what are
Yeah.
you doing? And He's like,
He's like, how can I
I'm
make it
doing,
more clear? You're
like,
not gonna have the perfect life.
yes. And I felt caught off guard. Still do sometimes.
Oh,
Like, oh, what? Like, as I look back on the past decade, like, oh, like,
oh
no,
my
God is working. I'm glad you brought up the point about like grieving.
Mhm.
And we have a whole chapter in our book, not part of the plan, actually called Sometimes You Laugh, Sometimes You Cry. And it's
Mhm.
about this idea of like, how do we weep and grieve
Mhm.
our own losses, our own unfulfilled longings, our own unanswered prayers, which are so real and raw and like weigh on our heart every day. How do we grieve those? But then at the same time, like, how do we not stay in a place that's just grieving? Like, how do we
Right.
also see the good that God is doing and rejoice in the things
Mhm.
He is doing in our lives, the things He is teaching us? And then the hardest part, at least for
Mhm.
me, is celebrating the good gifts that He gives to other people, especially when it's the very thing I've been praying for years. Like, you see that newly wedded bride and she's like 21 and gets married and then boom, gets pregnant and you're like, what? What? What?
Yeah.
God. So that, but I feel like there's a balance there. And that's what we talk about in our book. Like, it's not either or. Like, there
Mhm.
is, we can have hold in one hand
Mhm.
mourning and being honest, crying out to the Lord, like David over and over again in the Psalms, being so transparent with the Lord about the hardships and like the
Yeah.
emotions of our heart, taking those to Him. But at the same time, we're not just stuck in that place only, because
Yeah.
we don't grieve as people without hope. We grieve with hope, even our
Mhm.
own losses. And so, how's that been for you? I mean, just give me like the raw answer. Do you find it hard to celebrate with others as you wrestle with your own unfulfilled longings?
Yeah, that has been a huge thing that I have had to continuously go back to the Lord for, and I've had to repent for like
Mm,
holding bitterness and jealousy towards other women who, yeah, have been married for 2 months and then they announce they're pregnant, or they announce
yeah.
they're going to start trying for babies, and literally the next week they
Yes.
announce they're pregnant. It's like, what the
Yep.
heck? Or
Yes.
women who were like, we weren't even trying, and here we are. And I'm like,
Yes.
okay.
Just don't even tell me.
Yeah,
Stop.
just
Stop right there.
can you leave that part out?
Yes.
Yeah, it's hard. It's painful, man, but
Mm,
to not celebrate a life first of all, specifically when it comes to like women getting pregnant, for me to like not want to celebrate that a new life is being created is like me
mm,
like being like, God, you're lame, you made new life, and like I don't want to do that. And I
mm,
never ever want to make a sister in Christ feel like I'm not standing behind her in this new journey of motherhood and like creating a life within her. It's just an incredible thing. And so I just have to continue to remind myself to focus on those things. But again, also be okay with going home and crying a little bit and just being like, you know what? I'm so happy for them, but like, I'm sad.
Yeah.
Like, but
Yes.
then bringing it back to, but Lord, I trust you. I trust you. I trust you.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like do your thing in me. Whatever you want to teach me in this, do it because I don't know what you're trying to do.
Yes. Yes. And
Wow.
it's all around us. It doesn't matter it doesn't matter if it's pregnancy. Like for the
Mhm.
single girl who's watching every other girl get
Yeah,
engaged, right? Like for her,
exactly.
that's the thing. Where it's like,
Mhm.
oh, God, why aren't you answering my prayer? For us, we're in a similar season of longing for children, longing to get pregnant, and just not happening for other women. Like we've talked
Yeah.
about, there's so many things where we're just like, Lord, why? Why
Mhm.
her? Why
Yeah.
not me? In
Yeah.
fact, after my third miscarriage, my sister Bethany
Mhm.
found out she was pregnant. Like it was like a week later, and it
Yeah.
was so hard. And because my first two miscarriages, she wasn't even married yet, so it was
Mm.
like really really hard. But she's like one of my best friends. Like
Yeah.
my like we're so close, and we work together all the time, so it's not like I could just ignore her. Like
Right.
we were living life together on pretty much every level, including
Yeah.
ministry and like so much. And I just remember thinking like, God, excuse me, like I am going through probably the hardest grief I've ever felt, like even far more than the first two miscarriages, because I was much further along. The pregnancy just caught us so
Mhm.
off guard. It felt like this little blessing from the hand of God. And I just
Yeah.
remember thinking, why in the world
Mm.
would you like heap this on top of what I'm already going through by allowing her to get pregnant? And
Yeah.
then now it's like there's this tension between us as sisters. Like
Mhm.
you're walking through the most joyful time in your life, and I'm walking through like the most grievous time in my life, and yet we're trying to coexist here as sisters. And
Mhm.
I just felt like for both of us, that whole journey was so sanctifying, so refining, and in
Really
my own
cool.
heart, and my sister was so understanding. Like she even told me, she's
Yeah.
like, we would have never planned it this way. And I was like, you don't even say that. Like that's not God's in control. But yeah, like of course this is hard, and we both acknowledged it, and there were lots of tears and on both sides of the aisle. But just like going before the Lord, like, oh, like God, this is so hard. And the way I
Mhm.
feel like what He helped me to see in that particular season, and for the woman listening who's like, I am struggling to celebrate, what happens, and at least I saw in my own heart, is we get so self-focused. Like
Mhm.
our whole world is all about us and what
Right.
we aren't getting, what we are getting, like our dreams and plans. We become so self-consumed
Yep.
that we forget that our ultimate like calling as Christians is to be Christ-like,
Yeah.
and is to pursue the Lord first and foremost. And when I felt like God was just convicting me of this and showing me, like, look at the life of your Savior. He
Mm.
came to this earth not to be served, but to
Yeah.
serve. Like that was his whole model of living, was pouring out and serving others. And that's what he calls us to do as Christ followers. And so for me, God did such a work in my heart as I yes, grieved my loss and walked through that process, but at the same time said, God, I want to celebrate what you're doing in the lives of others. Help
Mhm.
me to pour out, to look for ways to serve others, to get my eyes off of myself. And as
Yeah.
God did this work in my heart, what I share in this chapter, in Not Part of the Plan, on grieving and celebrating, is that that is at the very heart of our Savior. And so I just want to read this for the woman who's like, I don't even know if I can do that. Like I
Yeah.
just feel like I'm in a desert. I just want to encourage you with these words directly from the book about pouring out and serving in your time of longing, and how the Lord can use that to bring
Mhm.
joy into your own heart. So I say, when you pour out your love for others, you become more like Jesus. When you choose to give, when everything in you is screaming to shut down, hide, and retreat, you display a compelling picture of sacrificial love. When you serve, you put the gospel on display through your actions. When you celebrate what God is doing in the lives of others, you point them back to the real giver of those good gifts. When you genuinely show up for someone who received the very blessing you desire, you're tangibly reminding them that God is good and can be trusted with the details of our lives. So just a little snippet. Yeah, and I feel like I'm still growing in that. But just an encouragement to any sister who's wrestling, like even tomorrow, like look for ways that you can pour out, ask God to grow you in your heart of love and service for others. And as you do that, I think you'll be amazed at how God does bring joy. He does bring hope. And it's because your eyes aren't so fixated on what you don't have, but on really like how you do have a lot that God has given you and how you can use that to serve others. Okay. In closing, we're going to wrap it up here. I could talk to you for like another 5 hours, but for the sake of time, I will let you go. But any final words of encouragement, because you are still in the midst of your story. Like, it's not like you're on the other side looking back going, now I've got a house full of kids. And yeah, there was that time where it was really hard. Like, you're in it right now. And so many women are in it right now. So what would you just say to that woman? Just kind of closing encouragement to her.
Yeah. I think, something that I've learned is just there are certain questions that like are not healthy for me to ask myself or ask even God. And not that he can't take them, but mentally it's just not a healthy thing to ask. Like, God, why did you bless her and not me? Like it's just like that's one, like you said, very self-centered, and it's like taking away just the blessing that this other woman received. And so, writing questions down, again, just being very practical and realistic about it, writing questions down of when you're struggling with grief, those are the questions you go to and you ask the Father. And or just writing questions down that you don't want to ask or dwell on regularly because they just don't lead anywhere good. I think for me that's just been like a big important thing, because I tend to get into the mindset of like, oh Lord, you blessed this woman with this but not me, what is she doing that's more godly than what I'm doing?
Yes.
Or and it's like, that's just one, that's not how God works. We live in a fallen world, first of all. Nothing's fair, nothing's right.
Yes.
God is a just God and he's a good God, but like, I mean, things just happen in this life. And so
the rain falls on the just and the unjust alike, right? It's not like God's a vending machine, like, okay, I honor God and boop, I push the button and get my reward.
Yes. And so, yeah, just remembering that, and also just, how much more beautiful is it to serve people when you're going through a trial? And not to say that you can't be served, and like hopefully people around you are serving you and when you're in your biggest moments of grief or loss, but like how much more beautiful is it to pick up your cross, lay down your flesh and your desires, and say, I'm going to serve others. I'm going to love others the way I want to be loved. I mean, that is the golden rule, that is exactly what Jesus did. And I mean, Jesus on the cross in his most painful way as he's dying says, Father, forgive them. Like he's not thinking about himself, he's thinking about others. And so, yeah, just remembering to think about others. It's okay to think about yourself. It's okay to, to have these desires and to grieve and to, want, but man, to live like Jesus lived is a really beautiful thing. So,
yeah. And what an amazing promise that in him we really can find full satisfaction, whether we ever get fill in the blank or not. Our joy and our hope doesn't have to be dependent on that. Like our circumstances could never change, and we can still live an abundant life in Christ. And I found so much hope in that. And then life is short and you die. So then there's that too.
Exactly.
Right?
This is not
it's
our
really short
place.
This is not our home. Yes. Morgan, thank you so much for sharing so honestly, so transparently. I know this is going to encourage so many women. And if you don't follow Morgan, guys, like you need to go follow her, because this is just like a tiny sample of all the goodness that she has to offer. So where can people find you?
Instagram is at Morgan Olliges. YouTube is Paula Morgan, and I also have a little vlog channel called Morgan Ollie Vlogs.
Yes. Okay, we'll link everything so people can find you. And I just want to give a small plug, what do you call it? A shameless plug.
Yes.
For our book, Not Part of the Plan. If you were encouraged by this conversation and you're like, okay, I need more. I want to know like practical steps. How can I trust God? How can I celebrate with my sisters? How can I not just give into my crazy girl emotions or just like be consumed with fear and worry? How do I trust God with the twists and turns of my story? Then grab a copy of Not Part of the Plan. It is truly written from my heart to yours and my sister Bethany's. And I think you'll find so much encouragement in the pages of this book. We have a study guide that is built into every chapter to help you dig deeper into the scriptures and just kind of the one application point that we drove in that chapter to help you take it deeper. So you can find that at girldefined.com/trust. And I love you guys so much, and we'll see you next time.